On Tuesday, the 23rd of November, 2 South Korean Marines have been killed and 20 injured after North Korea fired around 200 artillery shells onto a South Korean island near their disputed border. And pictures emerging from the regions show large plumes of smoke, houses on fire. Now, in the attack, the South returned fire and scrambled several military jets in response. Relations between the two countries have been strained for more than 60 years when Korea split into the communist north and the capitalist south. Both the UK and US governments have condemned the attack. Well, today's incident is just the latest in a series of military skirmishes between the two. Just last month, there was a brief exchange of gunfire across the border. No one was hurt in that, but it was an indication of just how high tensions are in the demilitarised zone. In August, North Korea seized a South Korean fishing boat, accusing it of straying into North Korean waters. The 7-man crew of that vessel was held for a month before being freed. And in March, a South Korean warship was torpedoed at sea. That killed 46 sailors. An international investigation decided North Korea was responsible. It's a claim denied by the North Koreans. And before that, the last major armed exchange was last November last year when South Korea opened fire on a North Korean ship that had entered southern waters. One North Korean sailor was killed in that. The North threatened merciless retaliation, leading South Korea to put the country on high alert. Well, Ki-hun Kwon is the foreign press attaché at the South Korean Defence Ministry. He explained what's been happening.
South Korea Air Force fighters are in airborne a lot, and we are not firing about that. And North Korea fired intermittently to Yeonpyeong Island. Now,
well, here the chair of the all-party group on North Korea, he's called Lord Alton, says this underlines how important it is.
Peaceful transition and change in North Korea, as we saw in the former Soviet Union.
Lord Alton there. Well, defence analyst Francis Chusa joins us now from Bristol. Very good morning to you, Francis. Motivation here. Why would North Korea want to do something like this?
Bearing in mind you are, in effect, during a transition period from one leader to another, someone who, until a few months ago, we had next to no idea who they were, what they looked like. Making a statement showing you are powerful, able to dominate and so forth, basically showing off, is something which I suppose in retrospect you can say we've seen before with dictatorships like this. And on top of that, North Korea just does things which we in the West may regard as being totally irrational.
I mean, could tensions ratchet up even more? We had those South Korean sailors killed earlier in the year. Where could this lead?
Well, that is the concern. If you were the South Koreans, you would say, hang on, every time something happens, we get told by the international community, turn the other cheek, we will do something on through the UN, sanctions and so forth, and we will get this sorted. And you could understand a degree of impatience in South Korea saying, every time we do this, we back down, we say, OK, let's play the long game. The North Koreans basically slap us in the face. I think that is going to be the biggest problem. Certainly the United States, who of course has got, 38,000 odd troops in the Korean Peninsula, will have to be doing, saying, yes, I know this is a real nuisance. I know it doesn't look good at all, but we've got to play the long game. Sanctions will bring North Korea down. You know, let's be fair, we know it is entirely dependent on food aid through the United Nations for the country to survive. You know, this is quite how frail North Korea is. It's a question of just trying to put that extra shove for things to change.
So just from what you say,
it's going to have to be backed up.
OK. I mean, do you think, Francis, just from what you're saying, that the South Koreans will be pushing for some kind of military retaliation here? Of course, we've always got to bear in mind here that North Korea has developed its nuclear capabilities.
That's why the situation is far from easy. However, as I say, you could understand people in South Korea going, you know, hang on a second, we put up with this the whole time, our ships get sunk, sailors killed, our islands get shelled, and you could understand impatience at the, as were the peaceful route, the peaceful stance, and people saying there's got to be some other way of ratcheting up pressure on the North Koreans. But I suspect this is precisely what the Americans in particular, but also other members, Russia and China as well, will be saying, no, we've got to keep on with the same strategy regardless of the frustrations.
OK, thank you very much. Francis Chusa there with his take on those developments between North and South Korea. Let's talk to our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Lisa Holland. And Lisa, just to broaden it out a lot here, of course, we've got China, crucial in the region here. Its attitude, what has it said and done in the past when these tensions have flared up?
Well, so far, China has said simply that it's concerned about developments going on between North and South Korea. It's really important to remember that China is the kind of country, whilst it's probably the only country that North Korea will listen to, it doesn't like to be seen to be interfering in other people's backyards, because then it believes that will give other countries the licence to be able to try to interfere in its own backyard. And as we know, there's a lot that the international community would have to say about various areas of Chinese policy, both domestically and foreign, not least human rights. So China is probably the only country that can bring any influence, but I think it's really worth remembering that it's in nobody's interest for this to escalate any further. We're not talking about Iran, we're not talking about other countries in the world. North Korea is an impoverished nation which is desperately needing foreign aid. Now, most of that aid comes from China, but Kim Jong-il signalled just a few months ago that he was prepared to resume talks over the nuclear issue. These are known as the six-party talks. There's been some serious flooding in recent months, and North Korea needs that kind of aid. In the 1990s, some 2 million people died from starvation. So I think that the best hope out of all of this is that we could say that North Korea has got this habit of reminding the world that it's still there, that it's an unresolved issue, that it's gone nuclear, and that it poses a very serious threat to global stability. But that doesn't necessarily mean to say that it is poking for some kind of all-out war with South Korea. It could just be a reminder, as far as Kim Jong-il is concerned, that it's there and it needs dealing with.
Something's got to change, hasn't it? Because the aid stick so far has not worked.
It hasn't worked, and we seem to have yo-yoed literally over the last decade between North Korea looking like it was coming in from the cold, and then ultimately North Korea totally turning its back on any sense of being prepared to have any dialogue with the international community. If you look back to 2002, it reactivated its nuclear reactor and expelled international inspectors. In October 2006, it successfully tested a nuclear weapon. February 2007, North Korea agreed to shut down its main nuclear reactor in return for aid and diplomatic reconciliation. And then it all broke down again 2009 at a second underground test. So you've got this whole yo-yoing effect going on, which doesn't seem to be getting anywhere at all. Although it is worth saying that a US envoy, Stephen Bosworth, is in the region. He's arrived in the Chinese capital, Beijing, today. Some people might say, is the timing of all this being used by North Korea in some way to send a reminder to him that perhaps the international community needs to be paying more attention to nuclear North Korea?
OK, Lisa, we'll leave it there for the time being. Lisa Holland.